Are you still talking about football?
Yeah, but without NFC North. Then let's talk football.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Heading North, an NFC North podcast, and I'm your host, D-Tron. And by the time you're listening to this, it's probably already Thursday. We're starting week 3 of the NFL season. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time harping on last week, mainly because I only picked one game correctly as far as winners and losers, and I was 50% on my picks against the spread. So I really just want to forget about last week, and I'd love a do-over so I can try better this week. What I've got on the show for you today, we're going to talk about 3 quick headlines from the week that was, and then I'll tell you 2 headlines going into this week that are going to be really important for each of the NFC North teams. But before I do that, I'd like to say thank you if you're listening. Make sure you share this with a friend if you can. And I'd like to give a big shout out to our sponsors, OffRackShop.com. OffRackShop.com is an online thrift retailer of men's and women's clothing, shoes, accessories, and more. So if you haven't already, visit the description or the links where you're listening, and you can get a discount code for Off-Rack Shop on your next purchase. All right, we're going to get it kicked off with the Bucks and the Lions. And I had this game being close, but I did not have the Lions losing. And clearly, I was wrong. So let me tell you about 3 headlines from this game that are important. First, Jared Goff started with a pick and he ended with 2. I don't know what was happening with Jared Goff this game. Seemed like he may have just not been all the way there, but he started that game with a pick, which granted was pass interference that got missed, but still threw it right into the coverage. And then he also threw another pick later in the game. But Jared Goff just didn't seem like himself in this game. And as Jared goes, so do the Lions. As far as the next headline, Aiden is a beast. He finished with 4.5 sacks, 3 of which were in the first half. So he was all over the place, clearly couldn't be defended. Even when they game planned against them, he was still getting to the quarterback. But in the end, it was just too much Baker for too long. The third thing, which is not usually at the top of my list for things that went wrong for Detroit, was some come on Dan moments. Look, Dan is a great head coach. He is a motivator. But in moments during this game, the Lions look unorganized and honestly unprepared for the moments that they were in. Whether it was the miscue at the end of the first half, which led to them not getting an additional 3 points, or if it was the plays that they called at the end of the game, not taking a shot at the end zone or not throwing a quick out to get a first down and give you one more shot at the end zone. Whatever it was, it didn't really seem like the coaching staff had it 100% put together last week. And unfortunately, it showed. But looking forward, the Lions have the Arizona Cardinals. And these are 2 teams that are both 1-1. Although the Arizona Cardinals, they're looking hot. They put up a lot of points in their last 2 games, or in their first 2 games, And so going into this, I mentioned it already. The key for the Lions is as Jared Goff goes, so do the Lions. Jared's got to play a cleaner game this week. And honestly, it may be beneficial for the Lions to get Montgomery involved early and more often, because the Lions are second in the league for total yards per game at 421 per game on average. And again, as Jared goes, and they're also second in the league for passing yards per game, 262 yards per. So this Lions team is going to have to air it out, but certainly want to play a more balanced game if they're looking to get a win against Arizona, who is pretty high powered and has some things going for them themselves. Arizona is second in the league for points per game at 34.5 points, and they're first in third down conversion percentage, which is really not going to work well for the Lions since they struggle against mobile quarterbacks, and Kyler Murray is about as mobile as they come. He's constantly scrambling, extending plays, giving them a chance on third down. So this is going to be a very interesting battle between the Lions and the Cardinals. If you wait to the end of the show, I'm going to give you my picks for this week, and hopefully we can go better than 50%. All right, getting into the Packers and Indianapolis Colts. So really, 3 quick headlines from last week. Josh Jacobs got the ball. He got the ball a lot. He ended up getting the ball 32 times for 151 yards. Josh Jacobs was Matt LaFleur's game plan. So that's first, is you got Josh Jacobs a lot because they were missing Jordan Love. And my assumption is they just didn't trust Malik Willis to put the ball in the air very often, nor should they. The second headline from last week is LaFleur clearly put together a winning game plan, and that game plan was run the ball. He only had Malik Willis throw the ball 14 times all game, and he didn't need to because they got the win. But LaFleur clearly put together a game plan that he intended to be intentional when the ball needed to go in the air, but he was really focused on making sure the run game kept Malik Willis from having to make decisions that could impact the game. And the last headline is Malik Willis. 12 for 14, a passing touchdown, 41 yards on the ground, 126.8 QBR, and a win. Look, if you got to go in, fill in for the starter, and get a dub, it doesn't really matter what your stats look like. But he didn't play a bad game last week, so it was good to see that I was wrong about Malik Willis, but I don't foresee that continuing. Now, looking ahead, this week, the Packers have the Tennessee Titans. And if I've got two headlines to go after, if they've got no Love, then there will be more Jacobs. But I think if they don't get Jordan Love back, there's media saying that Jordan Love will potentially be back against the Titans. If he's not, I think the Titans break this skid that they're on because their defense is first in total yards allowed and they're first in passing yards allowed. So the defense has been really good so far for the Tennessee Titans. It's just the offense that has been falling apart in the second half of all of these games. So I think if they don't have Jordan Love, and they already know who Malik Willis is because he played in Tennessee last year, then they're going to be able to get a win against the Green Bay Packers, which is going to break that 0-2 slide that they're on. And then I think if the Green Bay Packers have Jordan Love, they get a win. I just think that he is going to be able to maneuver playing in this game much better than Malik Willis might, turning them from a one-dimensional team where it's going to be run to a run-pass team where Jordan Love can exercise some of his creativity and flexibility as a quarterback that they really trust. Right? They don't really trust Malik Willis, so you got to stick to the script with him. But with Jordan Love, he can do some of those off-the-cuff plays that can give them a chance to beat the Tennessee Titans, who, again, have a pretty strong defense. Next, we got the Minnesota Vikings, who beat the San Francisco 49ers. And my goodness, who saw this coming? Clearly, not me. And I got to tell you the three headlines that I think did it. First is going to be no surprise. Brian Flores' defense really stepped up, as it has all year and as it did at the tail end of last year. The defense got 6 sacks and a pick on Brock Purdy. Now, I know Brock Purdy isn't Tom Brady, but Brock Purdy has been like the definition of consistent with this 49ers offense. And it was weird to see a 49ers offense that really struggled. Now, you can see how important it is to have CMC, although his backup has been doing the job. The Brian Flores defense has really stepped up Minnesota Vikings game and got me thinking that maybe some of what I lodged against them at the beginning of the year was unwarranted. Second big headline, JJ showed up, and it didn't take him very many catches to do so. And I guess that's not hard to achieve when you catch a 100-yard bomb, right? So 4 catches, 133 yards through 3 quarters. JJ was phenomenal, but it's sort of what you expect from him. He did get hurt, but apparently he walked off under his own power, and it's looking like he's going to play in the game, even though he did have a quad concern after the end of this game. And last but not least, from a headline from last week is, if you didn't get the memo, Sam Darnold is serviceable. He was sacked 3 times. He fumbled twice, didn't lose any of them, threw a pick, but he also threw 2 touchdowns, including that big bomb to JJ. So Sam Darnold has come in and so far in the season done exactly what Minnesota wanted him to do and has got them 2-0. And another team that's 2-0 that they're facing this week, the Houston Texans. So here's what to look forward to in this game. There's 2 big things. One, there's going to be an offensive show on both sides of the ball because you have 2 very young and very dynamic receivers. JJ for the Minnesota Vikings and Nico Collins for the Houston Texans. Both of these receivers are such a joy to watch when they are on the field because they are playing hard. They get open, they run good routes, and they're just entertaining when they're out there. So I think there's going to be an offensive show, which sort of clashes with the second point that I have, which is this is also going to be about defense. The Vikings are third in points allowed. They only given up about 11.5 points per game this year. And they're eighth in the league for rushing yards allowed, which is only 88 yards per game. And on the other side of the ball, the Texans are fifth in total yards allowed, only giving up 280 yards per game. And then they're seventh in rushing yards allowed. They're only giving up 87 yards, 87 and a half yards per game. This is going to be very interesting to see these two offense and defenses try to play chess with each other as they go up against the other team's strongest part, which is that defense. It's going to be such a good game to watch. I definitely want to tune in for the Vikings and the Texans as they clash in Houston. And then lastly, we got the Chicago Bears, who took on the Texans last week. Looking back, there's three headlines, and I know you know which one I'm going to start with. First, Caleb still looks like a rookie. He's got no passing touchdowns so far with all of those weapons. And you know what? He actually owes Tory Taylor an apology. He's got my man putting on real work out here, right? He had to put his foot to 6 punts last game. 284 yards punting for Tory Taylor when Caleb texted him and said he wasn't going to have him punting at all. Tory Taylor put up more punting yards during the game than Caleb did in the air and that the whole Chicago Bears team put up on the ground. I digress. Clearly, there's still some opportunities there for Caleb and the offense to click. The second headline is the Houston's defense is real. They had 7 sacks on Caleb and 2 picks. Yikes. It was not a good showing for him. And clearly, he's just holding the ball for too long. This is not college. The people you are playing against are much better than the competition that you are used to seeing. You've got to get that ball out of there faster. And then the last headline for last week, Houston is a real contender and Nico Collins looks like a top 5 receiver. I know I just mentioned Nico in the Vikings and Texans preview for this week, but last week he really showed you what he can do, over 130 or so odd yards in the air, and really put it on the Chicago Bears defense that looked elite in its first game. This week, the Bears are taking on the Colts, the same Colts who couldn't get it done against the Packers. So what do the Bears have to do? Well, the Bears defense is going to need to step up again. They're going to have to put together a quality performance, especially if Caleb is still asleep at the wheel and not able to throw touchdowns. If they can't get that ball across the goal line through the air to build up some of Caleb's confidence, this could be another rough game for them. But also, Caleb's got to get the ball out of his hand faster. The start of last week's game, he was getting that thing out of there pretty quick. 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds, and the ball was coming out. That's where he needs to be, 3 or 4 seconds and get the ball out. If not, the Bears are going to continue to have rough days because he's not going to have a chance to get it to his weapons. Taking 7 sacks is not the way to go. So if he can get that ball out of his hands quickly and the Bears defense step up, I believe they get a win against the Colts. All right, so that is our rundown for the day. Let me tell you about spreading the field. So I mentioned last week, I went 50% on my picks. I told you to take Indy over Green Bay. I was wrong. Green Bay beat them by 6. I told you to take the 49ers over the Vikings, -6. I was wrong. Minnesota beat the 49ers by 6. I told you to take the Buccaneers +7 because that line felt too big and I knew that this game would be close, and I was right. But the Buccaneers ended up winning by 4. It definitely covered the spread. They were on the positive anyway. So if you took that one, you probably got a win there. And then I told you to take the Texans -6.5. But I mentioned that I thought it was -5.5 would be the better line to take them at. If you took them at -5.5, then you won because Houston won by 6. So I'm going to call that a win for me and a 50% on the recap for last week. So let me tell you about my picks for this week. Week 3 NFL spread in the field picks. Here you go. The Texans at the Vikings. I got the Texans -2. I just think that the defense for the Texans will show up at key moments and they'll win this game by more than a field goal, but at least 3, and they'll cover that -2. Green Bay in Tennessee, I got Green Bay plus 1.5 if they get Jordan Love back. If they don't get Jordan Love back, I think the Titans finally pull it together and give us 4 quarters of ball, and they'll end up winning against the spread -1.5. So this one is going to depend on whether or not you believe Love is coming back. And if he is, and you believe that he is, you may want to get this line in sooner before they announce it. As far as Chicago and Indy, I've got taking the Bears to win +1. I think the defense shows up. And I think Caleb finally gets his first touchdown through the air. So give me Chicago +1 to beat Indy. And then lastly, it feels like a trap game. The Lions in Arizona against the Cardinals. Even with this feeling like a trap, I'm going to take the Lions -3 to snap back after that performance that they had against the Buccaneers where they just struggled to put it all together. And this is a hot team that they're going against. And as a warning, they do not perform well against quarterbacks who scramble. And so that is well documented. And it is also well documented that Kyler Murray likes to move around. So take it with a grain of salt. I am a Lions fan. Keep that in mind when you're putting in your bets. But I've got the Lions -3 to beat the Arizona Cardinals. And as a bonus, take the over in the Lions and Cardinals game. I believe the over was 51.5. If that's accurate, this could potentially turn into a shootout with teams that are, high offense, high scoring over the last couple of weeks. You definitely want to take the over in this one. All right, team, that is our show for the day. I appreciate you coming along. If you are listening on Spotify or maybe even Apple, there should be a link down in the bottom to send a text message to me. If you haven't done that already, I really appreciate getting the fan mail or the text messages from those who listen to the show. Definitely hit that link, send us a message. I would appreciate it. And if you're still here and you come back next week, which I hope you do, make sure you've got your bags packed because we are headed north. I'm D-Tron. Peace.
Are you still talking about football?
Yeah, Hotel NFC North. Then let's talk football.